Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. Today, I have a really special guest, Tara Topel from Topel's Service Center in Lake Mills, Wisconsin. I've gotten to know Tara very well over the past couple of years and a lot of different things that we're involved in. Love her passion for the industry, for her shop, and all of the special things they're doing. It's great timing for this podcast because they just celebrated their 75th anniversary, which is mind-blowing to me. And on top of that, she's been the recipient of some pretty cool awards. She is the 2021 Female Shop Owner of the Year for Women in Auto Care. She was also the recipient of the 2021 Women at the Wheel Award. You manage a bunch of different things within the shop, including the towing and the automotive service center. And at the end of the day, just a really good person that really cares deeply about this industry. So I am elated to have Tara Topel on today. How are you, Tara?
Thank you, Jay. I am great. Yes, thank you for having me.
So 75 years in a shop. It's crazy to me, and the evolution that probably took place over those 75 years. But walk me through it a little bit. Like, how did Topel start? Give me an idea how all of this crazy thing came to be.
Yeah, it does seem crazy. So in 1948, my father-in-law, Cliff Topel, actually started the business with his family on their farmland. We at our 75th anniversary party, we actually had some receipts from like July of 48 and of the building being built and how so cheap and crazy it was what it cost to build that initial building. I'm sure it didn't seem so at the time. Inflation's been real for 75 years. So he started it just as a way to provide services for their family farm, and then people started hiring him out, and then he expanded into the towing world. I believe it was in the early 50s. I think by 55 they had pretty well established that. Pretty much the only towing service like in the huge area between Madison and Milwaukee, and then yeah, he just kept it going with some amazing values and core beliefs that he had that kept him going all the way through. He was 50 when they had my husband Dan, and by the way, yes, a co-owner and helps me be everything that I can be so I can be here. He's out working so I can be talking on your podcast. But Dan has a lot to do with everything that we do too. And so, yeah, Cliff was 50 when they had Dan. The day after he was born, he went out and put on the tow truck CE Topel and Son. He could not wait to have a son, and that was his
Oh,
way of securing his future, I think, for us to be able to take over. So Dan and I got together in '94 in the racing world, and then got married in '96. And in the year 2003, we took the business over. Cliff was already much older then. He kept with us until he was 94. Working here at the shop, he came in pretty much every day up until then. And in January of 2020, he passed at 96. So that's where the longevity really came from. So yeah, we're just very honored to be able to have all their hard work and everything that they did over the years so that we could have this opportunity.
it's incredible. The one funny part, and I mentioned this to you before, Tara, but when I was growing up, I was also a huge racing fan, and I would spend my Friday nights at Madison International Speedway and had a hero card from you guys, and I think I still have it somewhere in some one of my collections of junk. I think I've got that. I've got that hero card, but so funny. And what I recall was you guys did an incredible job at branding even back then. It looked very professional. The car looked professional. Everything looked professional. You guys did a phenomenal job, but it's so funny how things come full circle in life.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I'm thankful I went to school for public relations and marketing, and that's the part of the business that I enjoy the most. So, yeah, it just between Dan's talent and his ideas and me being able to help support that. And we always have teams behind us. I mean, we can never just do it on our own. We know that for sure. Cliff did for many years, and we do as well. So, couldn't be doing this without all the people around us for many years.
how did the color orange become prevalent in the brand? Because I do, even from a kid standpoint, remember the orange and it just being different. And those of you listening but not watching, Tara's got some orange glasses on today. Orange, I think, is so so reflective of your brand in everything that you do, and I think that might have something to do with a little bit of your marketing background there.
Yeah, a lot of it really comes back to when Cliff had purchased a tow truck. He had like a purple tow truck once and red for a while. We have another business in town that kind of grabbed that red color, and then he ended up buying a tow truck that had orange on it, and then I think it just stuck. I did do a lot of research about when we rebranded about our colors and what we're putting out there, but ultimately it does mean trust and warmth, and so that's really what we try to stick with. And then, of course, we have the iconic 76 sign in front. So, which has the base of the pole from the Dells Motor Speedway,
That is
which
cool.
ended up working out, which is also where we race. I actually went into labor at the Dells Motor Speedway with our daughter Mallory. So, yeah, yeah, it was just one of those things that yeah, it was there and it works, and now we stick with it.
You weren't always in automotive, though, right? You came, or you didn't maybe have the desire to go into automotive coming out of school. Is that? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
No,
what did you think you were going to be when you were going to grow up?
um, I don't think I totally knew. I did in high school, I did telemarketing for our local insurance agency. And so I ended up being their office person, and then I got licensed in all four lines. So I think I was thinking I was going to kind of go into some of that. Really, when I graduated high school, I wanted to be a French teacher, which back then I was thinking like that was going to be in all the schools, like even in elementary school, you're going to be able to learn a different language. So that's what I started out with. I could speak it really well, but I couldn't write it very well. So then I just went into public relations, and I loved everything about what we were learning there. So yeah, I don't know that I totally knew. It was at that point though that Dan and I were dating, and we just decided like, we're spending a lot of money to go to college for something that you're either going to get a better job or, try to get a better job. And we just thought we'd take over the business, just go from there. So that's what we did.
That is cool. I didn't know that part of it. I'm curious as to, I mean, once you got into the industry, you're obviously super passionate now. And anybody that ever meets you, I think we all have kind of the same reaction when we meet you, which is that you are truly passionate about this industry over and above even just the shop, right? Like it does feel like you at the core of you are driven by this industry. Did it take time to really kind of develop that passion, or was that something that kind of came naturally to you?
Um, no, I mean, I think we can probably go all the way back to when I was a kid and I spent a lot of time with my dad. And he worked on his own cars. I didn't even know that people paid people to work on cars. I just thought that all dads just fixed the family car. That's just how it was. So that was a really big thing for me to get over the fact that people actually like spent their money to have their cars worked on. But I did. I was very comfortable being in the shop and being around the smells and the sounds and everything else that goes along with that. So as much as I think Dan's dad had such a big part of us, I think my dad did too that way. So growing up that way, and then yeah, it did take a while. I remember like even going on a trip many years ago, and a friend was with me, and somebody asked me what I did, and I remember her saying like, "It's okay, you can be whoever you are, like whoever you want to be," like kind of like looking down on the fact. And I don't think she meant it that way, like,
Yeah.
but that was how kind of how it was then. It's like, oh well, yeah, I'm like own a repair shop or so it's taken time. It's definitely the business has definitely allowed us to raise our family. Our children are grown now, and once they got to that point, I actually just kind of stopped and looked at everything and was trying to decide if I want to stick with it or if I wanted to just go do something else. Obviously, it takes a lot of hard work and effort and energy, like all the time, right? Our towing business is 24/7, and it's a hard life to live. But I also decided that I knew that I liked challenges and I liked that. So I think it was probably about 6 or 7 years ago. I went to a Women in Auto Care conference. I found it online. I was just searching online for professional automotive places to go. And it was really then that it made a really big turnaround for me to be able to see the other women in the industry that are professional, that probably is a kind of like job that I would have if I wasn't here. And I just remember leaving and thinking like, I can do that just at our shop level. I can like raise that level. And then finding our coach, Bob Greenwood, he really helped bring that professionalism into what we're doing. And just knowing that I can't have a successful business without a successful industry behind me. And I've also realized over time being at conferences that we're the bread and butter of all the industry. If we don't, it's really the technicians, right? And if we don't have our businesses, then none of the parts places have a business. None of them can exist without us. And they want to know so much about how things really work within our businesses. So it's important to have those relationships and that networking so that it can be the best that it can be. That was really long-winded. I try to be concise.
It was good. No, it was great because I do think it's so important. And there are a lot of managers out there, a lot of owners out there that I think you can easily get burnt out in this industry. It is taxing at times, but that sense of community when you go to a conference and you meet other people that are going through some of the same stuff that you're going through, and really just that encouragement to say, hey, this can be a very good business to be in if you're running it the right way. It just takes getting some of those people in your corner, and that can completely change your outlook on the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it helps to know you're just not alone. We're in a really small town in a pretty big area, but to be able to see it from a national or even a global perspective can just change everything.
Join top shops, dealers, and schools across the country to promote and improve technician careers. WrenchWay memberships help shops and dealerships engage with schools, improve technician hiring and retention, and make better business decisions with access to useful data. Shops use WrenchWay to build relationships with and support multiple schools on one platform. Show technicians why they're a great place to work. Stay up to date on best practices. Attract passive candidates. Tap into WrenchWay's growing network of industry professionals. And make better business decisions with meaningful industry data. Want to learn more about WrenchWay shop memberships? Visit WrenchWay.com and click on the For Shops tab or contact us at info@WrenchWay.com. Link is in the show notes.
Now, your facilities are incredible. And, to put the investment into the facilities that you did is really, really awesome just in general. But when you look at that and going back to what your friend had said, and, it's just a repair shop, I think people see that shop now. It's not just a repair shop, right? That is a top of the line facility that can compete with anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, really a lot of that, again, at that point of, however many years ago, it was like either we have to go big or we have to go home. There's no way that we were going to be able to attract top talent to be able to come work at the shop that we had before. And there was already a shortage then, and that shortage has gotten even worse. So we just knew that that was going to be like the most important thing, is having a great place for our team to come every day and want to come into work every day, be comfortable, be treated well, and to, have that environment. So yeah, and our city and our community has been extremely supportive of allowing that to happen. We have some really tight codes here in town, especially within the city limits. So to be able to adhere to that, we had a great general contractor that helped make it all happen. And so yeah, I say I feel like Orphan Annie every day, like coming to the mansion, like, wow, like where's Punjab? Like you just think that, I don't know. It's very surreal. At the same time, yeah, it just takes a lot to keep it all going and keep going in the right direction, which is why, again, it's so important, like, to go to Washington, D.C. and try to fight for the bills and try to fight for our right to be able to repair vehicles, no matter which side of the fence you're on. Something has to happen. Yeah. And so, you can't just be in it every day. You have to be stepping back and looking at your future.
I love that answer. And I love that you had in your mind when you're building a new facility, the need to get more talent in your doors and understanding that, hey, if where we're at right now isn't going to drive the standard of the type of person we want moving forward, we need to change that. And as you mentioned, go big or go home. I think there's a lot of that's true as it relates to finding this new level of talent or this talent that's out there in general. It's obviously a very highly competitive market for technicians right now. And a lot of it is just not having enough in the first place, right? We've really, I think as an industry over the last few years started to take it a little bit more seriously. Prior to that, there wasn't, a whole lot of attention paid to it. One thing that I give you a ton of credit for is you are one of the people that shows up for the schools. You show up at advisory committee meetings. You're there for just general support and actually working to build relationships with the schools, the students, and everybody around. Any advice for a shop out there that says, hey, you know what, I know I need to get more involved, but that's not my bag. I don't really like talking to people, or I really don't like, after working 8 hours at the shop, the last thing I want to do is go talk to more people. What drives you to be involved, and what advice would you have for other shops?
I think what drives me is the importance to elevate the industry. Something, again, I've learned over the last few years is just that a lot of what we're missing out on is more diversity, and that we need to be more equitable, more inclusive. And so when we talk about a lot of our shortages, I think that that's the source of a lot of our shortages, is that we're probably not even realizing it, but we're kind of putting people off, or people don't feel comfortable even thinking about the aftermarket, well, the automotive industry, to be able to be part of. So I think that that's a big part. I think so. For me personally, I'll be honest, a lot of it is just being a female in the industry, in the room, to be able to, for people to ask questions to, for people to bounce ideas off of. If somebody has students that they're, maybe just even from a female perspective, but just from a underrepresented communities perspective of how do we include that, and kind of being that voice, and realizing that it's a lot like harder of a thing. Everybody calls it soft, but it's really hard. So I think that's where it comes from. I think as far as, and just the industry as a whole, right? Like, in order to make a difference, you have to show up, like, period. You just have to show up. So I think too, as a smaller shop, it's harder for me to support them financially, but I can support them in other ways that are hopefully as valuable. So that is where a lot of my personal time comes in, to skip staying home and watching a TV show to be able to go and hang out and learn more about the industry too. It helps me see who I'm competing with for talent. So it's important. It's very eye-opening to go to those meetings. Advice, I think you just have to understand, like, your time is a bucket, right? Like, it's kind of like having enough money in your pocket. But it's what you do with that time that makes a difference. And if you don't, ultimately, I think we're going to keep having weaknesses within. Like, I think that, the strength comes in those numbers and that support. And so just not taking the time, but making the time, just looking at your schedule and saying, this is extremely important, or even just giving it a try, just show up once and see how it goes, see what it's all about.
Yeah, that is great advice. I think one thing you said there was really fascinating to me, which is it helps you see your competitors and kind of what you're up against. It's kind of an awkward, if you think about an advisory committee meeting in general, it's kind of an awkward group to start with, because you are pulling competitors together. A lot of folks in that room don't necessarily want to give out their trade secrets, but they also want to push the school to get to a better place. I think you've done a really good job at kind of crossing the bridge, if you will, and being able to develop some relationships even with your competitors to be able to help get these schools filled with people and help drive more people into the industry. Do you see that as an awkward conversation when you're in that room with maybe other, like, dealers, other independents, or is it, pretty comfortable?
I I think it started off a little awkward, but the more that you get to know them, we're all just people,
Yeah.
right? We all have challenges and we can all work together. Um, and that's how you get better. I personally like competition. I like to know what's out there. Going to the job fair my first time at Madison College was just like, it was a huge eye opener. I was really glad I had the cookies and the monster because I didn't have all the other like big bling that everybody else had. But it was just trying something and getting over it and then figuring out what it's about. That's helped me be able to help other shops as well. I've had a couple other people reach out and say like, hey, I want to go to this. What's it all about? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? And you don't know those things unless you go and you try, and then you hear the people around you like, these are the packages we offer. This is what we offer for training. This is what we offer for starting pay. All of those things. And then for me to be able to say, well, you don't have to work nights and weekends. Like these are the benefits and the things that make us who we are versus the other people that are out there. So I think it's just, maybe it should just be a requirement, right, for everybody. In order to have a shop, you need to at least go to one meeting and just see what it's all about. I don't know. But
I wish we would do that because I do think it falls really far down people's priority lists, right? As far as getting involved with schools, in a lot of cases, not to pick on my independent brothers and sisters, but there's a lot of advisory committee meetings that I've gone to that have very few independent shops in the room. It's mostly dealers, and I think the dealers do a nice job with that side. With that being said, the independent side really needs to step up there, right? We need more independents in these programs and actively involved with these programs.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think, too, the people that support the independents, so a lot of the main manufacturers or the main, suppliers of the parts, they have programs for their commercial accounts. It's one way I think that they, too, can step in and help support and get that information out to them. I think maybe this isn't totally going to what you just said. It's just something I'm thinking as we're going along, and that's
Please go right ahead.
I think a lot of times what happens is that shop owners, get in situations where they don't have any help, and then they become desperate. And so they're like, where can I get help? And then people tell them, well, try to go to the trade schools. So they go to the trade schools and they say, I need help. Like, give me your people, right? And it's kind of like anything in life. You get in you get out what you put in. So you can't just show up and put your hand out and say, give me your best. That's not going to work that way. And there's a lot of people in line way before you that have been giving that, that's just how it's going to work. It's like you have to figure out how things move along and how things work. And I think, that it's those investments of time that's going to make that difference. And yes, I mean, independents, we need to step out. We need to get there and show up and support in ways that they need support. They do. They need a lot of times it's not even necessarily like tools and tooling. It's like they need cars. Well, how many of us have cars around that people don't know what to do with, or they're going to have to, get very little for them? And how many of us can give an offer to donate a car to a local school for them to be able to, whether it's a high school, college, any of those things, for them to be able to get their hands on and get some experience? It's a huge opportunity that we're missing out on. And the schools need that, and they can only yell from the rooftop so loud because they only have so many ears listening.
It's so true. And I still walk into independent shops and see the flyer for Rawhide if they're going to donate the car. I'm like, yes, that's a great cause and something we should definitely take seriously, but here's something that could have an immediate impact on your local community. And if they get that car, that was something that was impactful to me when I was in high school. Actually, the local judge had a Mazda RX-7 and it blew the engine, and he gave it to me. And it was a rotary engine. Didn't really know anything about the rotary engine, but really piqued my interest and was able to work on it and, really dive into something for the first time that wasn't my daily driver that I needed to get to school, right? It was nice to be able to have that vehicle to just tear into and be able to really just get familiar. And with how advanced technology has gotten and how advanced these vehicles have gotten, even, 10 years ago, it can be a really intimidating thing. And, you look at the way that I think a lot of us got into the industry early on was, we've had so many podcast guests that started off at a full service gas station and were attendants for that, and like just so many different avenues to get that interest going. And I think we lost a little bit of that when technology has gotten so crazy, and where everything's so expensive now. I do think there's opportunities. I tell young people all the time, like, look on Craigslist. There's people giving away free lawnmowers. You know, if you're an eighth grader or in high school, go get that free lawnmower, tear apart the engine and put it back together and see if you can get it to run again. Like there's opportunities out there, but you just have to go after it. And I think the earlier we can do that, the more interest we get in just general, you know, hey, I like to fix problems, and this is what this job is basically, it's got a problem. I'm going to fix that problem and give it back to the customer, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. I love the point you make there of, you know, it definitely isn't all monetary that a school's looking for. They're looking for somebody to come speak to their class. They're looking for you to show up at their advisory committee and tell them what the right way to go is. So it is an investment of time, but I think that's one heck of a good investment if you're going to make one.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, like a lot of the elementary schools and the middle schools are starting to start STEM programs, and there's great opportunities for us to support those local programs as well within our communities. And that's where it all starts. You know, I mean, they're not going to have to decide when they're, you know, 8 that they want to be an automotive technician or, you know, or whatever it might be, even an owner someday. It's just that it's all starting earlier and earlier, and to recognize the strengths that students have that might not be book smart, or that might be learning a different way, which is kinesthetic. It's a great indication of the fact that I think that they could be amazing technicians, and that those people can make just as much of a great living as anybody else. You know, it's not looked down upon. It's not, you know, in fact, it's raved over, because they're ultimately the core of all of us being on the road. Yeah.
Now, you're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk. You've got 2 young people that are working for you right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. We have Yanni and Elizabeth. I guess I'm not saying their last names. I don't know how much
No,
you're supposed
you're
to say or
good.
not say about people, but yeah. So, and they're both doing a phenomenal job of learning and getting their hands on, but also supporting the technicians and learning as they go, and putting the work in. So,
How did you find out they were interested?
it's really interesting. Yanni has actually applied 3 times. He just started when he was 14, and obviously it makes things, our hands are kind of tied in this industry too. We're finding ways around that now with different apprentice programs through schools and everything. But so he came to us, and then similarly, I don't know, Elizabeth's might be, I'm in Rotary with their mom, so maybe that's part of it. I'm not sure. But
It's interesting. 2 different avenues to find somebody. Sounds like Yanni was interested regardless. Yanni wanted to be involved in learning this trade, which is really cool. But then the other really cool part is you do have a young female in as well. And I think, you know, similar what you were saying before, with having a female in the office that, you know, you can go talk to, you see a successful person that, you know, kind of looks like you, right? Like, I think that's that is really appealing when you have that. And I've talked to a lot of shops about that over the years of, you know, you want to get more female techs. Well, you need to get the first one, and then the rest will be easier.
Yes.
Just once they see somebody blazing the path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree, and know that they have somebody to go to. Similarly, at Rotary, I was volunteering at the like the concession stand last year, and there was a girl there, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm hoping to be able to be a technician." She didn't even know who I was. Like, she didn't even know that's what I did. And somebody else, I think one of the other parents, is like, "Do you know who you're talking to? Like, this is like they just built the new shop, you know, there." And so, you know, she hasn't ever reached out. I hope she feels comfortable enough that she could if she wanted to, but even maybe just to know that there's another female doing it, maybe in her mind that's all she needed, and she's just gonna figure it out, you know. So I think all of those things are very important. I was at an airport on my way somewhere a couple of weeks ago, and ready to fly out, and here It must have been like an aunt taking her nephew on a trip or something with a big group of people, and she was telling everybody about how he's up by the Appleton area and he wants to be a technician, and they were talking about everything, and I kind of had to pull myself out of my comfort zone, but I did go give him a business card, and I said, "Hey, I heard you want to be a technician. Is that right?" And he was like, "Yeah," and just said, if you need any help, like finding scholarships or any help blazing a path in the industry, just please let me know, because we need so many of you, and you're gold, and you should know that. So, and tell all your friends too.
Spread the word.
So yeah, tell more people. But yeah, so there's just all kinds of opportunities out there as long as you're watching.
I think it's awesome that you actively went outside of your comfort zone to strike up a conversation with somebody, because that isn't always the most comfortable thing for people, right? And being able to go and, that person will probably remember you forever now just because you did that, right? And maybe they do happen to move back to your area, which for those that don't know, Tara's kind of conveniently located between Madison and Milwaukee. So there's probably a good likelihood in Wisconsin you might end up by one of those places. So you never know what comes back around when you have those conversations.
Yeah. And even if it doesn't, it goes out in the world in different ways. So, if it doesn't come directly to me, I honestly think that's probably the core of a lot of it, is that like we can't always think that we're going to get something specifically to ourselves. We're just giving back in ways that you never know how it's going to come back around in different ways. And that just happens all the time in life. And the more that you give out, the more that somehow it ends up coming back around. And not that it has to be about that. I just really believe, and maybe that's part of the servant leadership as well, that I think kind of makes things a little bit different on my side, that I've had to get comfortable with, because it feels like it's weak sometimes, especially in an environment where, you have to be tough and you have to be strong, and, and you can be all of those things and still be a good servant. So I think that it comes back to everything what we're talking about now is just putting our time in, and, knowing that things don't always directly come right back like a boomerang, but maybe they come back in different ways, like a ripple or a wave.
Good karma is never a bad thing, and the better you treat people, I feel like that always comes back around. Want to win cash while helping the industry? Check out our game on WrenchWay Shop Talk called The Loneliest Number. Each week we post quick poll questions about industry topics. Technicians who answer the questions will earn points to play the Loneliest Number game for a chance to win our $1,000 monthly prize. $500 will go to the lucky winner, and the other $500 will go to a local high school program of the winner's choice. Start playing now at wrenchway.com/shoptalk. Link is in the show notes. You mentioned servant leadership. I want to ask you about that a little bit and talk to you a little bit about that. Are there challenges in approaching leadership through that servant mentality? Is it easier for you? Is it harder at times for you? Walk me through kind of what servant leadership means to you.
That's a lot of questions all at once, especially really interesting timing for me personally, to be honest with you. To me, servant leadership is that, like, if I'm going to show you a chart of my organization, most organizations have like the leader on top and then everybody else goes down. Our organizational chart is us on the bottom, and then we're here to support the people that end up working their way up. But essentially, like, the least is the best in our organization. So really they can look at it and see that they have everybody here to support them, including me here at the base, so it's just, I think that's a visual that I can give of what I believe it means, because I'm really just here to support the people that support the other people coming in, or the other people that are working within the organization. So I guess that's ultimately kind of what it means from a visual perspective. Like I said, I've had to get comfortable with that, because I believe that that's what's best, unfortunately. And this is why I said that the timing is like really, really prime and really, really raw, is that it also makes it easier for people to take advantage of you.
Yes.
And that's something that just recently happened, and I just it makes it really, really hard to deal with. And then it makes you kind of want to like harden up and not give people chances and not put in all the extra and not do the things, because it's just hard to think that there are people out there that
We'll take
that don't
advantage of
believe
it.
in that and will take advantage of it. Exactly. Yep.
It's been similar in my career as well, right? And I think I do start to see how people that have been not only in our industry but in business for decades, how they get numb to a lot of things. And I think that's really, really hard. And I appreciate your candidness there and your openness to talk about that, because I do think it's a really important thing. I do think the new age employee really craves that servant leadership and really wants that servant leadership. But it is also that fine line where you don't want to get kind of walked on as well, right? Like you're still there to run a business. And I think trying to balance the firm hand along with the ability to be a servant leader is one of the more challenging things, but it's what's required of a current day leader. And it is tough. Like it is definitely tough.
Yeah, we're always all learning, whether we learn to, approach things differently because that's not who we are. And I think it's interesting that we're talking about it, because I think I probably emulate my father-in-law, Cliff, in that regard. He was very giving. He would give, anything to anybody, even if he didn't have it to give. So I think that kind of comes through. On the other side of it, we have my husband, who saw that happen and grew up seeing his dad basically get taken advantage of a lot. And so he's a lot more guarded. He's a lot more protected in that way. And fortunately, we balance each other out. So, sometimes we kind of have to find levels somewhere in between, which is good, I think, to a degree, because you really can't be too far one way or the other, right? Yeah.
No, we're the same, right? My business partner, Mark, definitely more of that side, and we equal each other out. I think a lot in that regard, which can also be challenging, but I do think it's needed, and that balance is what, in a lot of ways, creates a healthy business and really creates a happy team. Now, I obviously think that servant leadership is meant to create a happier team, right? So I want to talk about that side of it a little bit, and trying to make sure your people are happy, make sure that your people are taken care of, that they like being there. Do you think that's changed over the years? Because it does feel like, maybe if you look back at our industry, maybe 30 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, I don't know, but like it definitely felt more along the lines of, you're lucky to have a job. Now it's the opposite of that. We're lucky to have you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the movie The Ants, right? Where the ants kind of finally figure out that they have the power, really. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, probably, and even similarly how we raised our kids, right? Like we have always told them, well, in our family, in our life, like other than like marriage is a commitment, a job is a job. It's just a way to make a living, and if it's not working for you, then you just need to go figure something else out. And I think a lot of parents have figured that out themselves, or kids have figured it out watching their parents come home basically bitching, being unhappy about work every day after day after day. And kids look at it and they're way smarter than we are, right? Like beyond just having the internet, like they have all the experience that we had from years gone by, plus what they can sit and watch. So if they are seeing that they're not happy, then why are you going to live that way? Go find something different. And sometimes things just change anyway, so why not be able to change within? Which is why I think it's so important, obviously, to have a career path for people to see how they can advance and that they don't have to leave in order to find something different within an organization. So.
Is the career pathing more challenging in an independent shop, if I can say that, in an independent shop?
In an independent, yeah.
But there are, it's. I think it's really easy for that technician that's out there, and say they want to become a service advisor or service manager at some point, and they look in the office and that service manager is young and doesn't appear that they're going anywhere. that can have a negative impact on their psyche a little bit of like, okay, my ceiling is limited because that person's going to be here for a long time. And I don't know that it's always correct. And, I look back at my time in industry, and I was that manager at one point where I knew that I probably wasn't going to stay where I was. And I remember having a younger person come in and say, well, since you're here, you're never leaving. This is, there's not going to be any chances for advancement. And that was on a dealership side. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, just keep working, because you'll probably have a shot at some point.
It won't be long and I won't be here. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's why you have to, this is going to sound probably super cliche, but I just really think that that's why you have to always be evolving and why you always have to be getting better, because as long as you're doing that, you are creating the positions, it's hard to say too, the positions get created as you go along and as you evolve as a business. So maybe there's not like currently, the way that we were operating before, it didn't have the levels for advancement, but we do now because we're growing. So there's all kinds of opportunities out there for people to develop into whatever they are aspiring to do or be. And some people are comfortable being where they're at and other people want to keep growing. And so it's just a matter of kind of like a plant, right? I love analogies, but like depends on if you repot them and you put them into a bigger pot, then they can keep growing, So fish, I think, is the same way, right? Like if it's in a bigger container, then so it's kind of the same. I think that then it's important for people to understand that there might not be a position now, but as you help make us better, those positions open up and get developed.
As leaders in a business, painting the vision for people is so important, so they understand that we don't expect our business to look the same in 5 years from now. Like something's going to be different. I think it's easier to have those conversations right now because technology is evolving so much, and the capabilities in our shops are changing by the day, it feels like. But being able to have that conversation with them and communicate with them, I think that's one of the big struggles in our industry, is communication from leadership to specifically technicians. You could say the same with service advisors, service managers, whoever it might be. But that communication, understanding what their life goals are and what their aspirations are, and then tying that to your vision as a business is really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit on a lot of huge points there, really. I mean, the communication, obviously, I think is the root of probably 95% of all problems, right? We all communicate differently, and how do we communicate and when, especially when things start getting more fast-paced. I think that that's a huge part of it. And then obviously, the advancement and the abilities that people have to do those things if that's what they want to do. Yeah.
I remember there was a book called, and when you said communication, good communication would solve probably like the majority of our issues a lot of times. There was a book called, I think, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus or something in the 90s that was a big hit. And I remember as a kid looking at that and being like, well, that's a weird title. That's a weird book. Why would anybody write a book about that? But when you get older, you're like, oh my goodness, that I should actually read that book.
Yeah. Yeah. And it might not even be about, like what we are is maybe just as being in tune to like slowing yourself down and understanding what people need and what works best for them, and just taking the time to, and you know what, ultimately it isn't always communication. The majority of the time I think is listening.
Active listening.
Active listening. Yeah. Yeah, we're always so thinking, even just here now, it's like, what is he going to ask me and what am I going to say? And, so it's to truly listen to what's being said, actively be listening, empathetically be doing those things. And it all takes time. So as much as technology helps us, technology hurts us a lot too, I think.
It does. And I apologize, because if you're actively listening, my sentences run on a lot, so that's really challenging. I like diving into questions and trying to dig a little bit deeper, and one of those things that you said really struck a chord with me is slowing down, and how hard that is, because it is brutal when you're trying to go 1,000,000 miles an hour and try to keep up with all of your obligations and everything that, goes on in a business in a day-to-day level. And it's interesting that you say that to me, because that's one thing I've certainly tried to work on myself with, and I still am terrible at.
I think it takes a lot of practice, and I think it's different for everybody. So, and I remember there was one time actually we did this exercise that was like, you had to say like, I see three things, right? Like I see a TV, a truck, and a bottle. And then I had to have you repeat it back to me. So like what you just heard me say. And then you'd have to say, is that correct? And then I'd say yes. So it's painful. And that's just saying like three objects of what you heard me say. But that's ultimately, I think, how communication is supposed to work, is like we're supposed to say something. You repeat back what you heard. I say, is that what it is or isn't it? You might say, well, that's not exactly what I meant. So then you have to go back to that same thing and then say, okay, this is, oh, yes, now we understand. Like, that's real life, right? Like, that's how it's supposed to be done.
TV, truck, in a bottle. Yeah. Is that what I heard? Oh, it's all right. Oh, yeah. we nailed it. All right. It's actually harder than you think if you take a minute between, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and you had to listen even after that, but because then eventually you added, and then you end up trying to practice that. I still am not very great at it, but I just remember learning that somewhere.
That's a good exercise. I'm going to use that. That is really, really good. So let's talk more about getting young people into the industry, because I do think at its core, the reason why we're all so interested and active with schools now, or trying to get better there, is that we know that we're fighting an uphill battle as it relates to filling all of these open positions that are out there, right? And that could be you and your competitors. Probably is you and your competitors that are looking for people. I think seeing what you're doing with schools and young people is very motivating to me to get more involved. And, hopefully we create this snowball where we're providing so much support for these schools that they do fill the classrooms with people that are interested in our trade. But what do you see the future of our industry as it relates to trying to get more people into the industry? Is it attacking those schools? Is it going after that younger population to really get them interested in what we're doing?
Yes, I think it's yes, and then way beyond that. It's like an epidemic, I think. And yeah. So I really think it takes everything. I heard it said not too long ago, like, well, there really isn't a shortage, because if I put an ad out, I can find technicians. Well, that's true, but I'm probably taking a technician from somebody else. So in order to actually bridge that gap, rather than having the movement between, means people coming in, and that means people coming in at a rate higher than they're going out. And I think a lot of studies are being done right now on technicians leaving the industry and why, and how and where they're going, and all of those things are really important to delve into to try to figure out how we can make that difference. But I think ultimately it has to happen at that young level. That's when they're most formative. But it's really hard. I'm not making excuses. I'm just like trying to find solutions. But like even in our town, we don't have an automotive program anymore. So even our youth apprentices that we have coming in now, and even just the red tape of getting that to happen is like pulling teeth. And I pretty much had somebody come to me not too long ago in so many ways saying like, we need you to have the curriculum. Like I can't have the curriculum. I have to run my business. Like I need the school to do that, or I need the apprentice program to do that. I can help with that. I can do as much as I can. And there are things out there to make that happen, but in trying to find ways to do that, we have schools saying, well, we can't do that for them because then we have to do it for everybody. And it's like, well, then maybe you should be doing it for everybody. I don't know, like if that's really the case. But we're sitting here in a town where there isn't a program, so we need to try to find a way to bring these people in. So it's actually, as much as I'm working so diligently at it, right here for me, it's even more difficult than I ever thought. And now I have to try to figure out like what are the channels that I need to go through. Like, can I just go to the superintendent of the school? Like, do I have to go to a principal? Is there somebody else within? And it just gets like I can make that time on top of running a towing business and an automotive business and marketing and, HR and everything else, accounting. Like, those are all the things. So somehow we need to figure it out. Like, somehow we all need to work together towards making it happen.
One of the big challenges that we fight, and I've seen this in a lot of my involvement with schools, is fighting against the school board, fighting against the administration, because maybe they don't see this as a great career path for their kids. They want to see them go to a 4-year school, and in a lot of ways they have no idea what our industry looks like. They have no idea what our industry has to offer. They don't know about the new technology and how advanced of a skill set you need to be a good technician in today's world. And that is where I am really, really pushing and challenging everybody listening to this podcast. Get out, talk to your schools, attend school board meetings where you can, really try to provide some pressure so that these schools can't cut these programs. We're seeing it all over the nation right now where, it's a typical path, and I've probably said this on content I've done in the past, but very much that there's a shortage of teachers. When a school loses a teacher, it's tough to find that new teacher. They post it on their website, don't get any if they do, any applicants, and if they do, maybe they're not what they're looking for. So they continually drag their feet. Ultimately, the school board and the administration, who doesn't look at us in a real positive light a lot of times, might look at that and say, okay, we can't find a teacher. Interest in the program is really falling off, and it's an expensive program to run. Like, why are we doing this? And it's an easy way to cut the program. So for us in industry, this is where I'm really, really, really driven to change this within the automotive and diesel sectors, is that we've got to get involved with these schools so that they can't not offer a program, right? We need to put pressure on these schools so that they know how abundant our need is and really how desperate we are to get some level of quality student out of the programs to be able to put into our shops. And if they don't know that, and honestly, if there's no pressure to maintain that program and keep that program running at a high standard, it doesn't take long for that program just to not exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's
scary.
It's not too far off from it completely going away. It's true. And to get away from the generation of, oh, you're not good at school, here, go work on cars. Go hang out in the shop then if you're not good at school. That's like the last that can happen. I mean, you can say, okay, you struggle at learning a certain way, then go work this way, but you still have to be great at it. You still have to work hard, and you still have to understand, because a lot of times people aren't even getting dirty anymore. There's a lot of software that's going into the vehicles, and it just is a whole different age of people. And, hopefully people realize that when they take their own cars in to get worked on, like the magnitude. Hopefully other shops are having enough of a value of what they offer that they're showing people what it really takes to be able to make a go of it into the future. And if you're not, then just, get out. Sorry, but it just makes it a lot more difficult for everybody else when people don't recognize their own value of what they have to offer.
We are about a month out from, as we record this, a month out from our Technician National event. Each year we put together roundtables and just talk about the industry and how we can get the industry to a better place. One thing that I think will be a recurring theme that day in a lot of what we say within our content is going to be talking about how do we get our best and brightest to speak glowingly about the industry? Because I think that might be the core of our issue in the first place, right? We have a lot of very, very good experienced techs that don't talk positively about our industry. And they'll say, if you go to a Facebook group, maybe the opposite of some of the stuff that we say, right? As leaders within the industry, like, don't go into this industry. Like, this is a challenging industry. They're not going to take care of you the way they should. How important is it that we start to get that right? That we start to make sure that our best and brightest are taken care of?
Yeah, I mean, it's crucial. You have to take care of people. You have to recognize their value. I hear that a lot too. I hear people say, well, if I pay them more, then they know, that they're worth more. And it's like, that's a big part of our problem, how you treat your people. And again, it goes back to recognizing that without technicians, we don't have a business. We don't have anything. And maybe if you're a shop owner that can work on things yourself right now, you probably aren't going to be able to for much longer if you're not keeping up with it. So, and we can't do it by ourselves. We have to have the people that are getting their hands in it, that are going to the classes and going to the training, and and they shouldn't have to pay for that. Like, they shouldn't have to pay for their training. They shouldn't have to pay for a lot of the things, a lot of the tools even that they need to be able to do their jobs. We have to start looking at a different way and stop doing things how we always did it, because it's not going to work anymore. So yeah, extremely important.
It's a great answer. And I think being able to adapt as the industry changes, as this next generation comes up, is really important. And we just got done with our technician local surveying, and one of the responses that really surprised me was the amount of technicians that said one way to fix the industry. We asked a question, what if you could choose one thing, what would that one thing be to change the industry? Eliminating flat rate was about 30%, I believe. Equally, about 30% said shop supplying tools. And that really, really surprised me, because when I grew up, and still, a lot of conversations I have with technicians talk about, I love buying my own tools. I love going on the tool truck. And so being able to look at different ways to understand what it is that your team wants and be able to talk with them through, like, hey, you all want us to buy your tools. That's a really expensive thing for us to adapt to, but we're willing to, over time, if you can work with us and try to give us an understanding of, like, what does that look like? What can we do to work together? And I think just having an open mind, and you hit it right on the head when you said we do a lot of things because that's the way we've always done them. And I think for leadership in our industry moving forward, we've got to keep our finger on the pulse of what the technicians want, so that we can get them to the point of speaking really, really highly of our industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like if you could solve that whole, how do you switch around the energy in a Facebook group for technicians, I think you'd have it figured out. I mean, I'm only one shop, and I can only try to, affect that as much as I can. At the same time, we all need to work together at it. And if I'm doing it, then hopefully the person down the street is doing it. And then, hopefully it just goes on from there. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and I think if your team sees, and again, this goes back to communication, right? If they see that you're listening to them, and they see that you're trying to move your shop in a better direction, that's probably as much of what they're looking for as anything, right? Like, are we actually trying to improve? Are they actually listening to me? And when I complain that, hey, this tool hasn't worked right for the last 10 years and we've done nothing about it, that drives frustration. That's what opens the door for them to look at other opportunities. And so if you can sit down, have good conversations with your people, truly get them to be candid in a way where they don't feel like they have to bust down the door and start yelling to be heard. I think we move the industry in a lot better direction if we do really, really listen and understand what it is. And listen, it's not an easy job, right? In a lot of cases, especially here in Wisconsin, I remember, throwing a car up on the hoist and all the snow's melting off of it and into your face.
And salt. Yeah.
Salt. Yeah. It's not clean water coming onto your face. That's for sure. But there are obstacles around that. And, even something like that, hey, let's put a policy in place that we got to pull the cars in an hour before they're going to go up on the hoist, or, something along those lines. It's just kind of listening and understanding that a lot of times it is a very physical job, and, sometimes their bodies aren't going to feel great. Sometimes, there's just going to be some obstacles that are inherent with being a technician. So what can we do to ease that pain and make it easier?
Right. Even something as simple as like paying for their work boots, and not for like a cheap pair of like,
yes,
sorry, wherever.
Farm fleet.
Yeah, work boots, and I guess they do have some good ones now.
They do.
But like they're on their feet how long of the day? They shouldn't have anything cheaper than like $200 minimum for a pair of work boots, if not more. And why shouldn't we pay for that for them? You know, they need it for their job. And if you're not paying for it, then they better know that they can write it off on their taxes, because they're only doing that so that they can come to work and make a living every day. And that's really what it's all about, right? They don't all want to just like come and work on cars all day long. Like, they're trying to make a living. They're trying to meet their own goals. They're trying to, you know, live their life and raise their families. And that's really what it's all about, is being able to help people do that. Maybe not when they're 18, just out of high school. I think that they're a lot more focused on money and, you know, all that type of thing. But as soon as you start seeing people, you know, make commitments in life and maybe making a family in life, and not to say that everybody has to do that it's one way or the other, but, you know, people start having goals that they want to, like you said, like figuring out what those goals are and how we can help them get that while we're getting the things that we want in life. That's really what it's all about. Yeah.
Win-win.
Sure.
We're looking for win-wins here. So it's so true. Everything you've said over the course of our podcast today, and I knew this would be a good podcast. You blew me away per usual, and it was such a fun conversation. And I just applaud you for everything that you do to go out of your way to help the industry. And there's so many good things that you've done. So on behalf of the industry, thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you for having a seat at the table and for being able to be here. I really do appreciate it more than you know. And obviously, like I said, the team that supports me is really the only way that I can be able to take the time to talk to you. So I'm appreciative for that as well.
We appreciate it. Hope to have you back on again sometime soon. I know you've done some roundtables with us and some other stuff in the past. So we'll continue to try and pick that great brain of yours for more good information. But truly appreciate you being on the podcast today.
All right. Thank you, Jay.
That wraps up this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench. Be sure to tune in next week for another brand new episode. As a reminder, don't forget to rate and follow Beyond the Wrench on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get Beyond the Wrench in front of other fantastic shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can continue to help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.